Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 100th episode of the Pittsburgh Sports Memories podcast. My name is Tim Hannon, and with me for the 100th straight episode is.
Steve Wirt. And
Hi,
you're not
Steve.
sick. You're not sick of me yet after 100 episodes, huh?
Not yet, not yet. Maybe 200. So, first and foremost, just thanks to all the folks who have been listening. Really appreciate folks going out here and coming back week after week and downloading new episodes, sharing their feedback with us, following us on social media, all that stuff. Just man, I think Steve, when we started this, I don't know where you thought it was headed, but I don't know that I would have saw us going all the way to 100 episodes.
I figured we'd rival Joe Rogan, but
We're close. We're like second place, I think. I haven't actually looked that up, but I just made that assumption.
Yeah, yeah.
So for this 100th episode, we're going to do. We wanted to do something special or different. So we thought, let's make a list of the top 100 greatest players in the history of Pittsburgh sports, and we'll count them down. And 100's a long list, so we're probably going to break this up into multiple episodes. But just some background on how we did this. So we had some criteria. So number one, it had to be a player, right? So no coaches, no owners, general managers, people like that. These are the athletes, the players only. Number two, they had to have played for a Pittsburgh team. So that would exclude people like Arnold Palmer or Lauren Williams, really great stars in their own right, but they played individual sports. They weren't on a Pittsburgh team. They were from Pittsburgh. So we excluded those people. And then we kept this to the pro and college level for Pittsburgh. So no high school athletes, plenty of great high school talent that's come out of Pittsburgh, especially in the football realm. But we wanted to keep it just to pro and college. And when we talk about the college players, we're talking about what they did in Pittsburgh, right? Not so much what they did in the pros for some other team. So that's our criteria. So let's jump into the list. So number 100 on our list is a gentleman named Matt Murray. He was a goaltender from the Penguins from 2015 to 2020. He wins 2 Stanley Cups as a quote unquote rookie. He also shut out the Predators in the final 2 games of the 2017 Stanley Cup Finals. And the way we did this, the way we came up with this ranking was Steve and I both made our separate lists, and then we kind of averaged them together to come up with our top 100. And Matt Murray was a guy that I did not have on my list, but Steve, you did. So I'll let you explain why you think Matt Murray is one of the 100 greatest players in Pittsburgh sports history.
You're telling me to justify my pick.
I am.
Explain yourself. He did win 2 Stanley Cups, and he was a very good goalie for about 3 years, 4 years. It like I that's got to count for something. I mean, 100 seems low to me because he won 2 champions. It wasn't like he wasn't like Frank Pietrangelo, who just like made like one big save, or I don't know, or who else, like a Charlie Batch or somebody that just had a couple good games but was instrumental, or like a Cedric Wilson that just made a couple plays in the playoffs. He actually was very key to their run. So I thought he deserved a spot in the top 100, than probably more than those guys if you were looking at them.
Yeah,
I
that's
guess I
fair.
guess I could. Why didn't you rank them in your top 100, Tim?
Oh, that's touche, Steve. Touche. I think for me it was just the amount of time was so short. But I think listening to you justify it, I'm kind of leaning more towards your side because it's kind of the Terrell Davis effect, right? So Terrell Davis was that great running back for the Broncos who really had
He had
like
like four,
three,
yeah, four
three,
good years.
yeah.
Yeah.
But in those 4 good years, he basically won the Broncos 2 Super Bowls. I know they had John Elway too, so it wasn't like he did it all by himself. And certainly the Penguins had Sidney Crosby and some other decent players, but they don't probably win those Super Bowls without Terrell Davis. And you could say the same about Matt Murray. So and Terrell Davis, they put him in the Hall of Fame, even though the sampling size was so short. So yeah, I think that makes sense, Steve. I'm with you now.
Okay. Well, glad I was able to change your mind there.
All right, let's go to number 99 on the list. It's Andy Van Slyke, Pirates outfielder from 1987 to 94. Van Slyke was a three-time All-Star and a five-time Gold Glove winner. That was really his specialty. He could certainly hit, but he was such a highlight reel player in center field. He would make diving catches. He had a great arm. This is the opposite of Matt Murray, where I had him ranked and Steve did not. And I think maybe there's just some bias here because Van Slyke was one of my favorite players growing up. Loved the guy, and again, he was just fun to watch and a huge fan favorite. Steve, any thoughts on Andy Van Slyke?
He was a good player for his time, but he wasn't even the best player on that team. Like that was obviously somebody else that I'm sure will be later on this list.
Yes.
And like when you go all-time Pirates, it's tough. Like I know the Pirates have sucked since 1979, except for that brief period. Like he just doesn't, like, even if you tried to consider him in those times, like, is he ahead of Andrew McCutchen or Neil Walker? He's probably like around Neil Walker kind of area, you know? And it just all time, he maybe just falls just off. And I mean, 199, you could debate, what's the really difference between 101 and 95 or 89? It was probably a just miss, but he made the list, and thanks to you, Tim. But I see my Matt Murray for your Andy Van Slyke. He was a very good player, and he was a very good defensive center fielder. He just didn't hit in the playoffs, if I remember correctly. So
yeah, well, nobody did. So that was the reason they lost all those playoffs, unfortunately.
Well, Bonds didn't, but I think Bonilla did, if I remember. I think Bonilla, at least the 1 year, Bonilla had a decent thing, but no.
All right, number 98 on the list is, we're going to go back to hockey. Brooks Orpik, Penguins defenseman from 2002 to 2014. There's only 8 players in the history of the Penguins who have suited up for 700 games or more, and Brooks Orpik is one of those players. He also won a Stanley Cup in 2009. Steve, what would you like to say about our friend Brooks Orpik?
I thought he was good. He's named after Herb Brooks, so he's got that going for him.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He put the hit on somebody from the Capitals that changed the series. I remember that. And then he scored. Was he the one that scored the elimination goal against the Islanders, or was
he
that
was?
Yeah. So just for that fact alone, he deserves a spot on the. He's the only guy that's ever eliminated the Islanders in Penguins history.
That's a good point.
So he's got that going for him. But once again, it's these guys in these later ones, like, yeah, he could be off the list. He could be on the list. It's a better list with him on it, I guess.
Yeah, steady.
Even though he went to the Capitals later in his career.
That's true. We won't hold that against him. But yeah, steady presence for a whole bunch of years. Number 97, speaking of steady presence on Penguins defense, it's Paul Coffey, 1987 to 92 for the Penguins. A Hall of Famer in the NHL, holds a bunch of records for defensemen. His time with the Penguins wasn't super long. It was about 4.5 seasons. But he did help them win a Stanley Cup in 1991. And I kind of feel like the Penguins kind of grew up when he came over from Edmonton. The Penguins were just this, even with Mario Lemieux, it didn't have any direction, didn't have any identity. And they got this bona fide superstar veteran defenseman from a team that was winning Stanley Cups. And I just felt like his presence alone probably did more than even his play, which was also very good.
Him and a guy that I know isn't on the list, Brian Trontier, I'm sure, it just kind of like knew how to win. Although I think Coffey was, still in his prime, where Trontier definitely wasn't.
Yes.
And he'd come from a winner in Edmonton. He knew how to win and was a good offensive defenseman. I don't think he played like he didn't play like defense. He wasn't a hitter like Brooks Orpik. He was more of a goal scorer and a puck handler. Kind of Definitely would use a better version than Chris Letang. Although I bet Chris Letang's ranked higher on this list than
Well,
Paul Coffey.
if you look at the overall career of Paul Coffey and not just his time with the Penguins,
Yeah,
I think you could definitely make that argument. But
yeah,
similar style for sure.
yeah.
All right, sticking with Penguin defensemen, we're just in the Penguin defenseman realm here. Sergei Gonchar, Penguins defenseman from 2005 to 2010. He did make an All-Star game. They won a Stanley Cup with him. And I think he was similar to Paul Coffey, right? He didn't come from a winner. He played for the Capitals, who always lost to mostly to the Penguins. But he was a veteran. He was a steady presence. And we did that episode about the 2005-06 team where they went out and they signed all those guys. Remember Steve Ziggy Palffy
Yeah,
and John LeClaire, and they were trying to build a winner, and it just fizzled out so badly. But the one guy that they signed that worked out really well was Gaunch, and he's with them all the way through the Cup years. He is that Paul Coffey, Chris Letang, offensive defenseman that runs point on the power play and everything. And I think he was huge for Malkin, right? Because
that's what. Yeah, that's why I think that was his probably his best role was he was helped. He kind of like how Mario helped Sid and into the league. It was kind of the same thing with Gonchar because they're both Russians and help them learn English and get acclimated to Pittsburgh and North America in general. So,
yep. So Sergei Gonchar, number 96. Number 95, this is a guy that is a name that probably not a lot of people know. It's Larry Brown, played for the Steelers from 1971 to 1984. So if you look at the list of most seasons in a Steeler uniform, he's right up there with 14. And he was a versatile player. He started his career at tight end. He actually caught the game-clinching touchdown pass in Super Bowl IX against the Vikings. But then he moves to tackle. He plays in 167 games over 14 years, member of all 4 Super Bowl teams, only makes 1 Pro Bowl. He is inducted into the Steelers Hall of Honor. Really similar to Brooks Orpik here in my mind, Steve, just a guy that was steady for a ton of years and never got, superstar acclaim. That probably wasn't known outside of Pittsburgh a whole ton, but his efforts for the team were always appreciated and recognized. And again, that's why he's in the Steelers Hall of Honor.
yeah, I don't know this guy from anybody. Was a little before my time really watching Steelers football, so I'll have to take your word for it, Tim.
Sure. Yeah, and the Steelers offensive line in the 70s, I mean,
well, it was really good. I mean, had
right.
Mike Webster.
Right. And so, I mean, they again, another thing where did they win 4 Super Bowls without the line that they had, but it was kind of, other than the center, who we'll talk about later, like you kind of alluded to, was mostly unheralded. So I thought it was worth putting another guy from that line on this list somewhere. So he's number 95. Number 94 is LeSean McCoy.
This is an interesting. Yeah, this is interesting. He's an interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
Player
played,
to talk about. Yeah.
Played from Pitt 2007 to 2008. Was the Big East Offensive Player of the Year in 2008. 2,800 rushing yards and 35 touchdowns. This is in just 2 seasons. So that's pretty impressive. Averaged almost 5 yards a carry. And then, oh yeah, he was pretty good in the NFL as well. Like I said, we're rating this on their time in Pittsburgh, not their time with other teams, but it's still worth mentioning that he went on to have a great NFL career too. Steve, Shady McCoy, your memories of Shady McCoy.
13-9, man. He was the offense.
Yep.
It was LeSean McCoy to the right, LeSean McCoy to the left. Oh, let's mix it up and run them up the middle. That was our whole offense that game. That and kicking field goals. Really good player, borderline, and he's like, is he going to make the NFL Hall of Fame? He's a very, very borderline case. We've looked at his stats before. If he makes it, he'll be, probably, I don't know. It'll have to be later rather than sooner, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with him and his Hall of Fame. Did he win a? Did he never was on a Super Bowl winning team?
He was on Kansas City when they won their first Super Bowl, but he was like a healthy scratch.
Yeah. And the Pitt teams that he was on, I don't think, besides 13-9, I don't even know. I mean, he maybe played in 1 bowl game. Maybe.
Oh, he played in the greatest bowl game of all time, Steve.
well, what was that? The Car Care Bowl?
No, the 3 to
Uh,
nothing Sun Bowl.
Oh, that's right. That was another. Yeah, that was another. We don't want Pat Bostic to throw a pass game. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
So
yeah,
it's like I don't know. He's a very borderline kid. If he gets in the Hall of Fame, I'll be kind of shocked. I don't think he's gonna make it, but you never know. I hope he does.
definitely a great player for Pitt on some,
Oh yeah, yeah.
very
But
mediocre.
yeah, to bat. He was on that one year they lost 6 in a row, which yeah, right now they're in a 4 game losing streak, and I think I read somewhere that's their second longest losing streak since that one. I remember
Wow,
one year they won 6 games and then lost the next 5 or 6 and didn't make a bowl game because they went 6-6 and Notre Dame sucks.
that sounds like
Uh,
Pitt.
well, it's the Notre Dame effect. You have to win, which I don't mind. Like, who wanted that 6-16 to go to a bowl game? I mean, so you got to win 8 games to go to a bowl game. That's probably how it should be anyway.
All right, number 93 is Doug Drabeck, a pitcher for the Pirates between 1987 and 1992. He was the 1990 Cy Young Award winner. That year, he went 22-6 with a 2.76 ERA. Only 2 Pirates in their history have ever won the Cy Young Award. Doug Drabeck is one of them, so that's a pretty big deal. He was definitely the ace of those early 90s Pirates teams. And it's worth mentioning, Doug Drabeck also has his distinction of once yelling at Steve for almost hitting his car with a football.
That wasn't me. That
Oh,
that was that was Mike Lowe. That was my friend Mike. I don't even remember him. And that might have been Sid Bream too, or no, maybe it was
no, it was
it was
Drabeck.
it was Drake. Well,
Yeah,
Mike didn't have very good hands or couldn't throw,
but he was throwing it to you, wasn't he?
I don't know, something like that.
You were in the middle of that fray. Doug,
Yeah.
Doug Drabeck, Steve and I went to the same school, and Doug Drabeck's kid went to our school. So, and somehow Steve was involved in a back and forth throwing the football around almost at Doug Drabeck's car. But let's talk about Doug Drabeck, the player, Steve.
Well, I mean, he was a very good player. Hey, I ranked them higher than you did. Well,
Yes.
you didn't quite have him on the list.
I didn't have
I
him on
think
the list.
I think he deserves there. I mean, he won a Cy Young Award, was the ace of that staff. His best years were probably there. He's referenced in a Seinfeld episode where they talk about Steinbrenner trading away people. He's one of the people they list as Steinbrenner trading away. So he just pop culture. He's got it all. Pop culture references, Cy Young Awards. Pitched a really good 7th game, just couldn't get to that 9th inning. Boy, if he could have pitched a complete game shutout, the Pirates would have lost in the World Series probably, but at least they would have made the World Series.
That's actually a really good. That's a really good what if, because you're right. He shut out Atlanta for 8 innings. What if he just gets them 1, 2, 3 in the ninth, and then the Pirates win the pennant? Is Doug Drabeck higher on this list? That's a great what if.
Yeah.
But alas.
Or maybe he has a dent in his car from a football. I don't know.
Okay, this one is for sure going to be controversial.
Oh,
It's Steven Adams, a Pitt center in 2013 on their basketball team. Was a big 6'11 center, made the Big East All Rookie team, led the team in blocks. And when you look back at his stats, they're not anything to scream at. And it was only that 1 year. But he just, if you watch him play, he was just very dominant. And you're like, boy, this guy's going to be a stud in the NBA. And the NBA agrees. They actually make him the 12th overall pick in the 2013 NBA draft. He's the second highest NBA draft pick ever in Pitt history. So I think I put him on the list because of all those things I just said. The things working against him were that he only played for Pitt for that 1 year. He didn't exactly lead Pitt to any glory. And again, he wasn't, he wasn't like that Dwayne Wade or think of like a great college player where they just willed a mediocre
Zion Williams.
Yes. Like willed like an otherwise not that great college basketball team all the way to like deep into the NCAA tournament. Steven Adams wasn't that guy. But just because he was just this stud kind of athlete, that's kind of where I had him on this list. And I know Steve, you didn't. So
yeah, because he never do anything here in Pittsburgh, and one of Jamie Dixon's only forays into getting a one and done, and it didn't really work out. Jamie Dixon's better with the guys that aren't NBA picks, like for
Phillies
what I
Page or somebody like that.
yeah,
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 he's better with those guys. They do
yeah.
better under him than the guy. I guess that maybe that's just basketball in general because it seems like the guys that have talent don't really listen to the coaches. They just kind of do whatever they want. Unless it's Phil Jackson, and apparently they all listen to Phil
Yeah, that's
Jackson.
true. That's true.
Even that guy down in San Antonio, I don't think they listen to him. Uh, he's been there forever.
Popovich.
Yeah, I don't think. But he had Tim Duncan and David Robinson. Like, how do you coach that?
Fair.
You're really tall. Get the ball and shoot it over the other really tall guy. You know, come on. I'm probably really selling him short. So I'm glad he made the list. That warms my heart because I did not rank him on this list.
All right. And number 91 is who Steve's talking about. Number 91 is number 91. It's Aaron Smith. Played for the
Nice.
Steelers between 1999 and 2011. He was inducted into the Steelers Hall of Honor in 2023. So another guy with, if you look back, if you're just looking at stats, you're like, he wasn't that good. But man, you could argue that those Steelers teams of the 2000s do not win Super Bowls without Aaron Smith. And I think the really telling thing for me with Aaron Smith was there was a season uh, late in his career, I want to say like 2010 or 11.
I remember this. Yeah, he got hurt.
He got hurt, and it was like a wake. It was the whole team was just so distraught. Like, what are we going to do without Aaron Smith? And usually, somebody gets hurt. Hey, next man up, and we're going to plug forward. And the reaction and the tone of all his teammates were such that, like, well, the season's over. I mean, it was literally like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, Aaron Smith is. I remember just thinking at the time, Steve, Aaron Smith is really valuable player that none of us fully appreciate.
I know I've told this on a podcast before, and I remember there was a Colts game the one year. I think it was the year they went to Super Bowl 45 and lost, maybe. And they were playing Peyton Manning and the Colts. That was the game where Ike Taylor tipped the ball perfectly to Marvin Harrison, who yeah. But I remember Aaron Smith was dominating the Colts so bad that first they had him single block. Then they tried to double team him. They still couldn't chop him double team him. And then they were rolling Peyton Manning away from him. Like, you just don't see like a defensive end in a 3-4 like affect the game. Nobody ran on the Steelers back then. Like, I miss those days. Like, now you watch this team and people get 5 yards like it's nothing flat. And it's like back then, you wouldn't even try it. Like, I remember Belichick and some of this, he didn't even try it. We're just going to pass the ball 60 times. They were not even going to try and run the ball. It's because between him and Casey Hampton and, who else? Ferrier. And yeah, it was, man, I miss that defense. I think Mike Tomlin might miss it too.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So Aaron Smith, number 91. Number 90 is Dick Groat, played for the Pirates between 1952 and 1962. Was a 3-time All-Star, was the league MVP of the National League in 1960. I don't know that I would have remembered that. Also won the batting title that year. He's in the Pirates Hall of Fame. He also played in the NBA and spent 40 seasons as the radio color analyst for the Pitt Panthers men's basketball team. Steve, Dick Groat, you had him a little higher than I did, but we both had him on the list.
Yeah, he was really good. He was a good basketball player too. He said All-American right at Duke, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And played in the NBA. Yeah. Very good player, very good. He played shortstop, yeah. A very, very good player, very good hitter, integral part of that 60 team that won the championship. And then had a great career. Like, as far as Pittsburgh goes, this guy's like basically, moved here and stayed here for his whole, career and life. He made a home like a lot of guys did back then. So,
yep. Best player. Honestly, he was the MVP, best player on that 60 World Series team. So,
which included Clemente, but it wasn't Clemente yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, number 89 is Phil Kessel. Played for the Penguins between 2015 and 2019. Kessel made an all-star game when he was here, but really, his contribution was anchoring that HBK line. That really, again, another thing where, just like Matt Murray, I don't know that the Penguins win those 2 cups without him in that line.
It was unstoppable.
It really was. Yeah. He never misses a game the whole time he's here. He actually never missed a game pretty much his whole career. He has that Ironman streak. and just a unique player, a fun player, definitely a guy
He's
that
a
had fallen out of favor other places, but found a his niche here.
he's a tough guy to rank. Like he's almost
Yeah,
like Aaron Smith. Like
yeah. It's all
he's a
intangibles. You can't look at stats. It's
well,
like all
he has good.
intangibles.
He has decent stats too. Even when he was with Toronto in the playoffs, like they always said, "Oh, he's a choker in the playoffs." And you look at like, well, he scored a lot of goals.
Yeah,
Like he doesn't play defense.
yeah. He's
That's
a one-trick pony. Yeah,
yeah.
yep,
He's kind. Yeah, it's but his one trick he's really good at. So
for sure.
yeah,
So, so Phil Kessel, number 89. Number 88 is Bobby Lane, Steelers quarterback between 1958 and 1962.
wait a minute. Is that the Hall of Fame of drinking?
Yes. Yeah, Bobby Lane reportedly used to smoke cigarettes in the huddle. Definitely drank a ton of alcohol. So he was definitely an interesting guy off the field. Did make was a two-time All-Pro in his time with the Steelers. Was definitely at the end of his career. By the time he came to Pittsburgh, he had won championships in Detroit, and was more at the end of his career, but still was really good for the Steelers. And kind of like Paul Coffey a little bit, Steve, where it's like that's the first time the Steelers probably had a superstar quarterback ever. You know, like somebody that would probably even sell tickets, right?
Mhm.
Like, oh my gosh, Bobby Lane, the guy that just won the NFL championship for the Lions a couple of years ago, now he's going to be our quarterback. That was probably a big deal at the time. So Bobby Lane has a place on this list.
Yeah, and I ranked him pretty high in top 60. You did not rank him, but Bobby Lane's an NFL Hall of Famer and played well here.
Yeah.
And hey, he was like if Johnny Manziel like was actually successful on the field.
That's a great description. That's such a good description. Yeah. Yeah, if Johnny football could actually play football.
Yeah.
That was Bobby Lane.
Yeah.
All right. Number 87 is Buck Leonard. Played for the Homestead Grays between 1934 and 1950. Was a 13-time All-Star in the Negro Leagues. A Hall of Famer. Was often referred to in his time as the Black Lou Gehrig. And I think, Steve, was he the one that is on the Ken Burns baseball?
Maybe Lou Gehrig was the white Buck Leonard.
Hey, very true. Very true. I think he was the one that was Steve. Was he the one that was on the Ken Burns baseball thing? So
yeah,
I always loved his insight later.
Yeah, he was great. Like about just talking about playing like barnstorming around there and like, we had to play like 2 games on Saturday and another doubleheader on Sunday. And yeah, it was like the crazy stuff they used to do to make money back then because they weren't allowed to play in the major leagues, but I guess it made for some interesting history. But unfortunately for him, I don't know. Did he ever make it to the Major League Baseball?
I don't believe he did.
50.
I think his career was kind of over by that point.
Yeah, because what was Jackie Robinson, 1948, 47? 47.
Yeah.
And then even Satchel Paige, it was the second one was a catcher for Cleveland, wasn't he? Or for the Dodgers. There was another the guy that ended up like paralyzed was like the third. I think. I can't remember his name. I'm sorry, but yeah, that's very good player, very interesting person. If you ever get the chance to watch, it's fun to watch, like oral history, and it's good that Ken Burns captured that because it'd be a shame to lose that bit of it's history, part of our country, part of baseball. Good to see him recognized, and I'm sure there'll be more to come of these types of players.
Oh yeah.
To play.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yep. Number 86, another guy that not everybody's going to be familiar with, Billy Knight. Played.
I know he's good. I don't know anything about him really. Never saw him play. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, played for the Pitt basketball team between 1971 and 1974. So not a time that college basketball had really hit its peak yet. You had UCLA. You had a lot of West Coast basketball popularity, but in places like Pittsburgh, I don't know that you had a ton of interest outside of the college. He was voted to Pitt's all-time starting 5. He's had his jersey retired by the university. He averaged 22 points a game, and he led Pitt to a school record 22 consecutive wins in 1974, which is pretty impressive. So Billy Knight,
except for the fact that at that time, like UCLA was winning like 60 games,
right? Yes. Yeah, like I said, if you weren't UCLA, you were kind of just second tier.
Yeah.
And those, there's a great ESPN 30 for 30 did a great documentary once about the Big East Conference. And they really talked about how that was really the start of East Coast basketball catching on, college basketball. And that didn't come until the 80s. So at this point, again, forgotten, but don't want to forget him here. He's number 86. Another guy that played during the exact same era of college basketball in Pittsburgh, Norm Nixon, played for the Duquesne Dukes between 1973 and 1977. He averaged 17 points a game, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, scored 1,800 points, and had his jersey retired by the university. Generally considered one of the 2 or 3 greatest players in the history of Duquesne basketball. Steve, he went to the Lakers in his pro career, and we were talking about that before we were recording.
I did not know anything about Norm Nixon, and if we would have done this like 2 years ago, I would have been as clueless as anybody. But I watched that HBO, a docu series called "Winning Time" about the Lakers, and he was the point guard when Magic Johnson showed up in that draft, and so he had already been on the team, and he kind of like shows Magic Johnson the ropes of like how it's going to be in the NBA. But they ended up working together and they won a couple of championships with the Lakers. And I did not know anything about him. And great. He had a nickname, Stormin' Norman Nixon, which, I guess, Stormin' Norman Schwarzkopf later would, maybe it's just because Norman, it works with Norman. I don't know. But it just, I didn't know he played for Duquesne. I did not know he played for Duquesne, but a really good basketball player, and I only really know him as from that series about the Lakers, and I wouldn't have known him, otherwise since. So obviously a very excellent basketball player, and it's funny to think how good. I didn't realize Duquesne was still that good in the 70s.
Fun fact: as of the time of this recording, his senior season, 1977, is still to this day the last time that Duquesne made the NCAA tournament.
Well, when you have that guy, sure, you probably have a really good shot. And and that was when they only had 32 teams?
I believe, it was smaller. I know it was definitely
you had to win I like it better like that, where you have to win your conference to get in. It should be like that. Now, I just think 100 and some teams is too many. It's just stupid. And if you want to have another losers bracket tournament, have the NIT. That's why they had the NIT. And I don't know. I liked it better when you have to win your conference to get into the tournament. It makes sense to me.
I will clip out your comments there, Steve, and I will forward it to some university presidents who I'm sure are very interested in losing money by
losing $1 billion. Losing $1 billion in March there. Yeah. But if you still play them,
it definitely deletes it. You're right. You're
like people wouldn't watch those games in the NIT. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, same with 7 NFL playoff teams and all the baseball playoff teams that they have now. It tends to dilute it, but then more fans are interested. I get why they do it too. So
maybe they could make the winner of the NIT then make them the play in, or make them the last 2 or something. I don't know.
Fair. All right, let's move on to number 84. Another guy that people are not going to remember. It's Wilbur Cooper.
Oh, I remember him well. Yeah. I remember watching him back in 1912 there.
Yeah. Pirates pitcher from 1912 to 1924. Led the National League in wins in 1921. The reason he's on this list, there's only one pitcher in the history of the Pirates to win over 200 games. Pirates don't have any 300-game winners, but they have one 200-game winner, and it's Wilbur Cooper. So I think he belongs on the list. Granted, he played during an era where the Pirates didn't win any championships, played during an era where pitchers tended to pitch a lot more.
He just missed it too, huh?
Yeah,
he would have played one more season.
Or if he would have started 3 years earlier. Yeah. So, but I just, again, no one else has that many wins. I just think he has to be on the list for that.
The Pirates in pitching aren't exactly like, I've always thought that about the Pirates. They've always been more about hitting than pitching. And maybe that's why but they still won 5 World Series but they've had some of the greatest hitters of all time. So,
and they had good pitching during those series, right?
But not great guys. But not great.
Not like all-time great pitchers, but guys at least during that time.
Like you look at Yeah, you look at the Yankees or the Cardinals or
Sure,
even the
sure.
Dodgers, like they don't have a Sandy Koufax. They don't have a
No,
Whitey Ford or who's a great Cardinals pitcher. I'm trying to, I
Bob
don't know.
Gibson.
Yeah, they don't have a guy like that. And
Yeah.
that's quite honestly is probably why they've won. Those teams have won more
Yep.
championships than the
Yeah.
Pirates.
Totally agree. All right, number 83. Speaking of Pirates pitchers,
Yeah.
it's Elroy Face. Played for the Pirates between 1953 and 1968. He was a three-time All-Star. He's in the Pirates Hall of Fame. And his big contribution in terms of like we just talked about winning championships was he saved three of those games in the 1960 World Series. So Steve, you had him higher on the list than I did. You want to talk about Roy Face?
I can't know. It was Haddix who came in the ninth, right? Of the game.
The Mazeroski
That
game, yeah.
yeah, but he's still like saving those games. That's the one of the big reasons the Pirates won the 1960 World Series because they won the close ones and lost the other ones. So obviously having once again like the Pirates like every World Series, like 1925 didn't have the great pitching, but when you kind of put them all together and they all kind of have played their role, they were good enough to beat a better opponent. And it's just it's interesting that like once again, they don't have great pitching, but they're a Pirates Hall of Famer. He's in a three-time All-Star, so good for Roy Faze.
Yep. All right, number 82 is Rick Kehoe. Played for the Penguins between 1974 and 1985.
Oh, come on, Lady Bing. Why even list that as an accomplishment, Tim?
It's a trophy. He won it.
Oh,
It counts.
how gentlemanly of him.
So as Steve said, he won a Lady Bing trophy. He also was a 50 goal scorer, a two-time All-Star, almost 800 career points.
Well, what's his penalty minutes? Like 3?
Well, in that era, it was probably like 120. It was like leading the league in low penalty minutes. Rick Kehoe, really, if you want to just boil it down to one thing, he was arguably the Penguins' best player in the era before Mario Lemieux, which isn't saying a whole ton because the Penguins weren't very good, but he was a good player for a lot of years. And gosh, if he just comes along 4 or 5 years later, he might have been he might have been that Brian Trottier role you mentioned earlier, Steve.
Yeah. I think he was a coach eventually.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Yep.
So good for Rick Kehoe. He was still a good player back in those days when they weren't very good. So
yep. Got to show some love to the bad Penguin teams of the pre-Mario days. Number 81 is Ray Brown. Played for the Homestead Grays between 1932 and 1948. He is also in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and he is widely considered. We were talking about Pittsburgh pitchers. He was widely considered the best pitcher in the Negro Leagues during
maybe if
his
the Pirates would have had him instead of some of the guys they had in the 50s, they would have been more success or 40s. I mean, yeah.
Well, the Pirates actually had some good teams around that time. Not a lot. The late 40s they got really bad.
Yeah. Did you see Fred Clark signing this guy? Well, that's not happening.
That's the problem.
I don't know about Barney Dreyfuss. Barney Dreyfuss still owned the team back then. Yeah. So yeah.
There was we talked in one episode about 1938, the year that they were they literally expanded the press box at Forbes Field because they thought they'd pretty much clinched the pennant and were going to the World Series, and then they let the Cubs come back on them. There were seasons like that where if you had a really good pitcher like this guy, and you would have just been, not a total racist.
Yeah.
Who knows what they could like? They had all these great like. That's the thing that really hurts about this era. They had two teams in Pittsburgh, two Negro League teams, the Grays and the Crawfords, who were stacked. We're going to talk about a handful of these guys. I mean, these are great players. Yeah. And sure, do they stack up against Major League talent the same way they do against Negro League talent? Who knows? But man, they could have used this guy.
Yeah.
Just so stupid. Such a stupid reason not to let these guys play for your team. All right, number 80 is the Wrecking Ball, Mark Recchi. Actually, three separate stints with the Penguins, 88 to 92, 05 and 06, and then came back later for 06 through 08. Mark Recchi is in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He has 154 goals for the Penguins, but 10 of those were in the playoffs. He was a pretty clutch player. He did score the clinching goal that sent the Penguins to their first ever Stanley Cup final against Boston in 1991. And he also assisted on Sidney Crosby's first goal and Evgeny Malkin's first goal. So
Wow.
pretty broad career for Mark Recchi.
Yeah, and he got traded before one of the Stanley Cups, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he and
Yeah.
Paul
This
Coffey both
yeah.
got traded for that was for Tocchet and Ken Reggett in
Yeah.
'92. So he was only on that one Stanley Cup winner, and then he was there in 2008, but I don't think he was on the playoff team that went to the finals against the Red Wings. I think he had gotten traded or retired or something before that. So yeah, he just interesting career with the Penguins. Really, really good player. Kind of a little undersized, but man, was really tough and just clutch. All right, number 79. This is a good example, Steve, of what you were talking about earlier. It's Kent DeCalvi, Pirates pitcher between 1974 and 1985. He's in the Pirates Hall of Fame, and he is instrumental in Pittsburgh's 1971 World Series, or 1979, I should say, World Series championship. He saved 3 games, including the deciding Game 7. So I think another example of not an all-time pitcher, not a Bob Gibson or a Sandy Koufax or a Clayton Kershaw or
Or
whatever.
even like a Goose Gossage or a Trevor Hoffman as
Right,
relievers go. Yeah.
right. But when they needed him to be clutch,
Yeah.
right, he was clutch.
Yeah, and played a little left field too. And yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
he's a really, really good clutch pitcher, like you said, and came up big time in those 3 World Series wins.
Yeah, and
Or
and
3 World Series games, let me say.
yeah, and it's a guy where if the Pirates don't win that World Series, we probably don't remember Kent DeCalvi the way we do.
Hmm.
So, but he did, and that counts for a lot.
Had cool glasses too.
He did. Well, yeah, he had those kind of those. I don't know what you call those, like the
The cop
faded.
glasses or
Yeah,
aviators. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
He looks like, can I see your license and registration? Throw your,
Right.
let
As
me
he
throw
as he
your
steps
permit.
off his motorcycle.
Yeah.
All right, we're going back to the Negro Leagues here. Oscar Charleston, Homestead, 1930 to 31, and then he played for the Pittsburgh Crawfords between 1932 and 1937. He was a center fielder and manager. He's in the Pirates Hall of Fame, despite never playing for the Pirates.
We're just going to take credit for him.
Yeah, uh, he he's also in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He was really fast. He had a very strong arm in center field. Was a very smart guy too. Again, also managed the team. Steve, what do you want to say about Oscar Charleston?
I think he ran the team too. Like he almost was like a manager, owner,
Mm.
player, like very, and to do all that and run a team and back then in the 30s, that is the depression. So not just a good player, but probably would have been a great baseball executive too if he would have been given a chance. So
Yeah,
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 what an amazing life, and we're happy to honor him at 78. Yeah.
for sure. All right, next on the list, Sam Clancy, Pitt Bas. We'll cut that part out. Next on the list, Sam Clancy at number 77. He's a Pitt basketball player between 1977 and 1981. He averages 14 points and 11 rebounds per game. He's the only Pitt player to score more than 1,000 points and grab more than 1,000 rebounds during his career. Steve?
I do not remember Sam Clancy at all, but sounds like he had a great career at Pitt. All them rebounds, and did they make the tournament any of those years, 77 to 81? I probably not. Uh, Once again, UCLA was kind of still, well, no, maybe not. UCLA was probably running out of steam by then, but definitely, like, Pitt basketball, it's tough to rank some of these guys because they haven't had a terrible amount of success. And even back then, like, once again, you had to win. I think they did not expand the field until the mid 80s. So you had to win your conference. And I don't think Pitt was in the Big East yet. They were probably
They
still
were not.
they were in that Eastern 8 or something like
Yeah.
that. So
This was also the era of basketball where the big man was really important. This is pre Michael Jordan, pre Magic Johnson,
yeah.
right? So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and guys
Well,
like that.
it would have been like Larry Bird and actually, what's his name? Magic Johnson would have been,
At
because
the end
was
of
it
yeah, at the end
70s?
of
Yeah.
his tenure. But
Yeah.
but even the year Michael Jordan got drafted, he was the third pick because Hakeem Olajuwon and Sam Bowie were drafted before him.
Yeah.
Why? Do you remember why?
Because they were both like
Yes.
big guys. And like,
Yes. So even into the mid
yeah.
80s, there was still
Even on that North Carolina team where it wasn't Worthy considered the better player.
yeah, because he was
Yeah.
tall.
Yeah.
Remember like left tackle in the NFL used to be like the most important position in the world, and
Yeah.
that was all the high draft picks, all the big free agents. I think it still is, maybe not quite as much, but that was kind of like the left tackle era of basketball. If you had a big man, and Sam Clancy was a big man. All right, number 76, we're going to stick with Pitt. We're going to go to football. It's Chris Dolman, played for Pitt between 1981 and 1984. We talked about him in a recent episode we did about the Pitt Hall of Famers. Foge Fazio, the coach of Pitt back then, said, quote, sometimes we'll stop the game film just to point out to the team Chris's desire and hustle to get there. So like they literally they'd be playing film from the previous week and they would just pause it and be like, let's go back and just watch Chris's hustle. His 25 sacks still ranks 6th all-time at Pitt. He ends up being the number 4 overall pick in the 85 draft and has a great career and makes the NFL Hall of Fame for the Minnesota Vikings. Again, we talked about him just recently, Steve, Chris Dolman.
Yeah, great defensive player. I can't believe he's still ranked 6th all time at Pitt. I mean, he's played a long time ago, and Pitt's kind of had like a really good run of defensive linemen till at least this year. But
yes, they have. Yeah,
yeah. So
that's a good point. That just shows how dominant he
yeah.
really was. All right, number 75, another defensive
I'm
lineman.
glad he made it. Glad he made it on the list.
It's the big snack.
Even
Casey
though
Hampton.
I didn't rank him apparently.
Casey Hampton played for the Steelers between 2001 and 2012. He made 5 Pro Bowls. He was named the Steelers' 75th anniversary all-time team. Just a big defensive tackle, perfect guy for that 3-4 system that they played. Could stop the run, could just take up space in the middle. Didn't look like much of an athlete, but he was great.
Yeah, my favorite one. I went to a Raiders game. That would have been 2004. That was, remember that they won week 1 against the Raiders, then lost to the Ravens the next week. And that's when Tommy Maddox got hurt. I remember they tried to block him with like a little running back, and so the guy went low, and like Casey Hampton literally leapfrogged him and then ran and like tackled it was like an I formation, and ran and tackled the other running back that was trying to run to the sideline. He ran down a running back from the nose tackle position.
Wow.
And I mean, I don't care. I mean, who's the big tackle who always gets all the love from New England? Ted Washington or some of those guys. It's like I thought Casey Hampton was far superior to any of those guys that the media always worshipped. So
yeah, I would agree. And he was on 3 Super Bowl teams. So
yeah.
All right, number 74, a guy that was also on those 3 Super Bowl teams, a guy we did a whole episode about. His name is Hines Ward. He played from the Steelers between 1998 and 2011. He has exactly 1,000 career receptions. He was the MVP of Super Bowl 40. Again, we did a whole episode on him, Steve. What is there to really say about Hines Ward that hasn't been said already?
Well, I think he's been disrespected at 74.
Yeah. Nobody tell Hines he was only 74 because he'll come out of retirement to try to prove us wrong.
Or beat us up or something.
Yeah. Yeah, great player. Just, always physical, always hustling, always had the smile on his face. Again, there's nothing more we can say about him that's not already been said. Number 73 is Bob Friend, Pirates pitcher between 1951 and 1965. He was a 4-time All-Star. He's a member of the Pirates Hall of Fame, and he did play on that 1960 World Series team, although he did not pitch particularly well in that series, unfortunately.
Yeah, he was part of the reason they had all them blowouts.
Yeah.
But I will say this, they would not get to that World Series to even have that opportunity because he had a great regular season. And I think he just was worn out. I remember he pitched a lot of innings
Yep.
before that, and so I think he was just worn out by the time they got to that World Series. So,
Yeah, that's
but,
fair. And
but a good
the rest
pitcher.
of his team bowed him out. So
Yeah,
we won't hold that against him. Again, the Pirates don't have a great history of pitching, but to have a four-time All-Star during an era where the team was pretty good, he was definitely responsible for, like you said, the Pirates being good in the first place. Number 72 is Joe Mullen, played from the Penguins between 1990 and 95, came back a little bit later, played on the 97 team. He is also in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He was a veteran goal scorer who had won the Stanley Cup with the Calgary Flames when the Penguins picked him up. I
is that
think he
anything like the Calgary Flames? No.
same team. Fun fact.
Okay.
I think he had played for Bob Johnson when Bob Johnson was coaching the Flames. So he came to Pittsburgh as a veteran, kind of a veteran presence, and he scored 8 goals in the '91 playoffs. And that was the year he was injured. He'd come back from injury, and he scores 8 goals in that playoff run. That's pretty significant. 8 goals. So Joe Mullen, a guy again, a guy you can make a very good argument that they don't win that Stanley Cup without a guy like Joey Mullen.
Was he for a while there the all-time leading American scorer in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
NHL? And I've met him multiple times because when I used to work at a Wendy's on West Liberty Avenue, I used to come through the drive-through and order a
Oh,
double
okay.
cheese every day. I met Joey Mullen so many times I couldn't even tell you.
Was he a
Hockey
nice
Hall.
guy?
Oh yeah, always very nice.
Did
Always
you ever
open
hit
to.
his car with a football?
No, I just handed him his double cheeseburger and wished him well.
Oh,
One
that's good.
time, one guy got his autograph one time. I felt bad. I was like, don't bother the man. He's just trying to eat his lunch. Yeah.
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 Yep. All right. Number 71, another guy we've talked about on the show a couple of times, Carnell Lake, played for the Steelers, was a safety between 89 and 98, made the Pro Bowl 4 times, was a member of the 1990s All-Decade team of the NFL. And one of his biggest contributions was he played cornerback the year that Rod Woodson got hurt in 1995. And if he doesn't do that, the Steelers do not make the Super Bowl that year. I can 100% say that with certainty. Carnell Lake, just a super underrated all-time Steeler. Just you don't. I don't know. He just was one of those guys that was there and always made plays, always kind of kept the defense glued together, but never got a ton of acclaim.
He's got like, yeah, that Aaron Smith or, Casey Hampton
Yeah,
or maybe like, I think Casey Hampton was just more recognizable, but Aaron Smith could walk down the street. And that actually happened. There was a story about Aaron Smith after the one Super Bowl in Detroit. He just like drove home like everybody else after the Super Bowl and like stopped at a Turnpike Plaza. And I guess one of the reporters saw him and like nobody even recognized him. They're like, hey, there's Aaron Smith over there. And it's like the send of people. But Carnell Lake too, like good guy, not recognized. You don't see much from him. I don't know if he's coaching somewhere or whatever. Or what did we have? I don't remember what I ranked him actually, but he's
yeah.
on the list.
He was a assistant coach for the Steelers under Tomlin for a while, but I
Yeah.
don't know what he's doing now.
Yeah. Good for O'Connor Lake.
All right, number 70 is Charles Smith. He played for Pitt in the late 80s. He was the only Pitt player to be a 2-time first team All American. He was the Big East Player of the Year in 1988. And he is the highest ever draft pick of the NBA. For a Pitt player, he was selected 3rd overall in the 1988 draft. You could argue, I think you could definitely make the argument that Charles Smith might be the greatest Pitt player of all time.
I don't know. I think DeJuan Blair, but hey, that's just me. I mean, they once again they didn't win anything with him in the tournament. Was he on the team that lost to Billy Gein and the
Providence. Was it Providence or Purdue?
Purdue. I think it
Something that
was
started with a P.
I think it was Purdue.
I think he was on that team. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had some really good teams in the late 80s. They never made it real far in the tournament.
You know who coach on that team was? One of the assistants.
Who?
John Calipari.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. So Charles Smith is number 70. Number 69 is Dwight White, Steelers defensive end between 1971 and 1980. He is in the Steelers Hall of Honor. He made 2 Pro Bowls. He was a member of that famed Steel Curtain defense, that defensive line that featured Joe Green and others. Dan Rooney called him, quote, one of the greatest players ever to wear a Steelers uniform, which is pretty high praise coming from Dan Rooney.
All right. Do you know who the first player to score points in a Super Bowl was for the Steelers?
Oh, yeah, on a safety. It was Dwight White. He tapped Fran
You know,
Tarkenton in the end zone.
funny story. Stan Savran knew that fact, and he went to Dwight White and asked him that question. And do you know what Dwight White's answer was? Franco, Terry,
Yeah.
even Dwight White. What a humble guy, but great player. And yeah, he'll get his due props here from us.
Yeah. Yep. But another guy that wasn't as heralded as some of the other great Steeler defenders of that era, but was a great player in his own right. Number 68 is Archie Vaughn. Played for the Pirates between 1932 and 1941. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He was a shortstop. He was an 8-time All-Star, won the National League batting title in 1935, had over 2,000 hits, had a career 318 average, just an all-around great player. Had a tragic end to his life. We talked about that in our tragedies episode that we did recently. But Archie Vaughn, a great player from an era where, again, the Pirates were not very heralded, and just not a lot of people remember players from that era.
I don't remember Archie Vaughn at all, but sorry.
Well, that's why we're giving
1930s baseball just
right
for 100, Alex. If it wasn't Babe Ruth, it didn't count, I guess. I don't know.
Well, that's why we're giving him his due at number 68.
Yeah.
Number 67 is Tom Barrasso, the only other Penguins goaltender to win two Stanley Cups. He played for the Pens between 1988 and 2000. He is in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He holds the record for consecutive NHL playoff wins with 14. He won 14 straight playoff games, which is pretty impressive. Steve, you had him ranked pretty high. I didn't have him on the list. If I'm being completely honest, it's a little bit of the Terrell Owens syndrome, where Terrell Owens should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he wasn't because people just didn't like him. Or was that Randy Moss? It was one of those two guys.
It's definitely Terrell Owens.
It was Terrell Owens.
Yeah.
And that was kind of garbage, because it's like, it doesn't matter if you don't like the player personally or if he was a jerk and treated people like crap.
But it's not like an OJ, like where you can make, well, this guy legitimately has serious character issues. It's just like, he's just a jerk.
He's just a jerk. Yeah. And so I will be the first to admit that my bias probably crept in here when I kept him off the list. You had him high, and I'm go ahead. Tell us why.
Because he won 2 Stanley Cups and he was a really good goalie. I mean, I didn't like him much as a goalie. I thought he was bad against the breakaway, but he was good against like normal slap shots and stuff. But I thought, like, just on a breakaway, for some reason, he always seemed to not do well in that situation. But I think he won a Vezina, but not with the Penguins in Buffalo.
Right.
He won a Vezina. So I don't think, have the Penguins ever had a Vezina winning goaltender?
They have not.
I don't think they have. So, I mean, he's definitely a good player. They win 2 cups with him. They probably don't win 2 cups without him. But no, I mean, you try and be objective as you can. So,
yeah, he was not very good against breakaways or Tom Fitzgerald shooting the puck from center ice in the third period of Game 7. Other than that, he was great.
They win 2. I mean, he outdueled Dominic Hasek in Chicago, in the other one, Belfour, in that Chicago series in '92. But
yeah,
I mean, they probably could have put the Russian team that was never lost the game, and the Penguins probably would have beat them too. But
if only he could have outdueled John Van Briesbroek and Glenn Healy, then he would have